Before I start today's video, I have some disclaimers. I will not be mentioning any names in the video, and I'm going to be cleaning it up quite a bit because YouTube could flag me. Today's video is about some dark history. Serious dark history that happened in Versailles, Indiana. Right now I'm at Versailles State Park, and this has part of the dark history I'm going to tell you. So let me go ahead and show you. Right now you're looking at a sign of a tree. As you can read the sign, if you want to pause the video and read it all the way through, that's what today's video is about. As you notice, I'm leaving out one word. I'm calling it a tree. In a way, kind of a special tree. But guys, I got a story for you. There was this gang many years ago in the late 1800s. I don't know exactly how many people were in the gang, but they would basically do some illegal things like illegal card playing. They will basically steal things, small things. Then they started doing bigger things. Then they started robbing trains. And then they started getting really brave. They actually found out a guy had sold his hogs and he had a lot of money. Now, people that had money back in them days, they would rob them. Well, this guy sold his hogs, and on the way home from selling his hogs, he paid some of his bills. And when he got home, these bad guys came in and robbed him. He didn't have no money left, and they even took his wife, which was up in age, I think in her late 80s or early 90s, and put her up on top of a wood-burning stove and lit the stove, trying to get her to tell them where the money was. There was no money to be found. So the sheriff's office at the time caught wind of a place they was going to go rob in town. Yeah, and this place, I don't know the name of the place, but the owners was going to be out of town because they had took the train to Cincinnati, Ohio. So these bad guys, this gang was going to go in there, a few of the members of the gang, and rob them. So the sheriff's office like, wait a minute here. So they got there and they went inside, the sheriff's office did, and they put the horses across the way in the barn, and they sat there and waited for the bad guys to come. So sure enough, two of the bad guys from the gang did come. When they was getting in the door, the sheriff went to put his hand out with his gun, and the bad guy closed the door, and the sheriff shot himself in the hand. Well, there was something like over 30 shots exchanged from the gang and the sheriff's office. It was some people wounded. And finally the gang decided, like, let's get out of here. But the sheriff's office and his deputies was able to notice some of the gang members. That's right. So within the next couple days, they rounded up the gang members, and someone was seriously injured because they were shot. And they took them to jail, guys. And this is where it gets really interesting. Now the townspeople around here, around here in Osgood and Versailles, townspeople was not having any of this stuff. No, they wasn't having this. So they formed, what would you call it? A mob. Over 100 guys. And it is also said to believe that mob of 100 guys was led by people that knew what they were doing. Possibly people that were generals in the Civil War. The mob was headed over here to Versailles, where I'm at now, because this was the meeting place. And the road I'm going to show you right now is possibly the road they took to get in here. It's the only road I could find that would have been operational back in the the late 1800s. So this road right here was more than likely the road that they basically took to get in here. Now the roads they were taking to get in here was unpopulated roads, and they were to be real quiet. They was all told to wear blue and have a bandana. It was all told to wear the same clothes so they could be recognized. But they all headed here. Over 100 guys here in Versailles State Park. Over 100 guys. Now I'm going to take you to another location. Before we go to the next location, I'm not exactly sure. Let me turn the camera around. Not exactly sure if this was the location or the place I'm about ready to take you. Now you gotta remember, back in the 1800s, this lake was not here. This used to be farmland. There used to be people living here. Back in the 1800s, and probably I think all the way up to 1900 something, there was over 200 families that lived here. They had a church, they had a school. This was all a community then. Today it is a park. The lake was put in. I'll do a video on that some other day. So I'm not exactly sure if this is where they met or where I'm going to take you next. Not exactly sure. We're about here in Versailles State Park, which was not Versailles State Park at the time where these men came, but I'm thinking it could have been the first spot I showed you or even right here. Right here in this location, because right up yonder there is where that jail is, guys. Right up over that hillside. That's also where that sign I showed you in the beginning of the video is at too. Let's take it up there and let's finish out the video from that point. Now, when all the men gathered here at Versailles State Park, which it is now, all the men gathered, they basically set up a rocket to notify the people, I would imagine, that's already up there by that tree. And they drew straws ahead of time to see who was going to go into the jail. So that's what their plans was. They was going to go break these guys out of jail and take care of justice themselves, you know? So they drew straws who was going to break them out of the jail. They also drew straws who was going to do the deed at the tree. You know what deed I'm talking about. All right, let's head up to the graveyard and we'll talk more from there. So when all the mob left the Versailles State Park, which was not the park at the time, I know I've said that many times, they more than likely came up this hill right here. Right down yonder there is where we was just at, guys. Back in 1800s, the late 1800s, that was all flat. That's more than likely where the mob all met up, and that's where they shot the rocket up to let everybody, the rest of the mob, know they were coming. And they came up this hill right here. And right here today is a graveyard. Kind of interesting. I don't think it was a graveyard back then. I do not know. It might have been. I'm pretty sure it probably was. And right up yonder there is where that sign is. Let's go up that way and I'll tell you more. Right over yonder there, that is the jail. Back then, it was another jail there, I'm pretty sure. They got into the jail and the sheriff wasn't there because the sheriff basically had to take time off because he was shot in the hand, if you remember from what I told you earlier. But there were some jailers there. So a couple of the mob people went up and said, hey, we're here to bring out the prisoners. At first they said no, but then they said yes real quick. Well, guys, when they went in that jail to break out them prisoners, it was not nice about it. No. As a matter of fact, they shot one and they took a stool and hit another one in the head and they drugged them out on a rope. Drugged them all the way down the road. And this is the road they drug them down. Right here, I'm showing you now. They drugged them all the way down this road. All the way down. Until they got to right where that sign is. That tree. The tree does not exist no more. The only thing left of the tree nowadays, I'm sorry, I was seeing what my puppy and my wife's doing. Only thing left of the tree nowadays is a small branch. And that branch, I do believe, is in the historical society building here in Versailles. But they drug them all the way down that road. And it was crying, it was begging for their lives. They took them to the tree. And they did what you guys know what they did. Now, after it was all said and done, one of them, I believe, is buried here in this cemetery. And it was 4 altogether. I believe they were 4. And 4 of the other 3 were buried in Greendale Cemetery. Which is funny because I know of a Greendale Cemetery in Greendale, Indiana. But evidently, it must have been in Greendale Cemetery here in Versailles at that time. We looked for it today. We could not find it. It's very possible that Greendale Cemetery is in Osgood. Some of the bad people from that gang was from Osgood. Now, there was a big investigation. The governor sent down some detectives from Indianapolis to check in, and everybody was mum about it. Not a word. A question up to 50 people. And they all said, hey, I was at a barn dance that night. There was a lot of barn dances going on that night. And then it's like, you know, I was with this person. They all covered for each other. And then they sent down 2 other detectives and still could not get a word who the mob was. Any of the members of the mob. To this day, nobody was arrested. Nobody was charged for what they did. You know, justice, some people think. Like I said, it's dark history, you know? Now, I'm telling the story because if they're going to put a sign out about it, and they're going to have some of this on the internet, you can bet your butt I'm going to tell it on YouTube. Because to me, this is really dark history. It is. But yet, it interests me. This is stuff that I really, really get interested in. And I have to clean it up because I'm afraid YouTube may flag me. This video may not see the light of day. That's why I'm not saying what type of tree it was. You guys seen it on the sign. You knew exactly what type it was. But guys, this has been it. And thanks to my lovely wife, which is over there with my puppy. And my puppy Kit. They helped me out with today's video. Alright guys, that's pretty much it. And if you guys were hoping to see Kit on this video, next time you will. This video was basically for that tree. Yeah. Here in Versailles, Indiana, y'all. And by the way, the lake I showed you, that's the lake I fish at the most. Interesting stuff. Dark history. Very dark history. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments down below. If you want to look up any history on this, go to Google, type in that particular tree, Versailles, Indiana. You can learn all about it. As a matter of fact, there's a video out there that explains it much better than what I did today. Until then, come on, let's get out of here.